Okay, coaching. When you hear the word coaching, what comes to your mind? Sports. Okay. And mentoring. Okay. So think of sports, and football season's coming up. There's a lot of different types of coaching. You've got the old, was it Tom Landry, was the Cowboys coach that always wore the baseball cap and the suit and everything. You know, the calm, gentle, prodding coach. And you've also got who's the Patriots coach that always goes off the wall? Whatever his name. Yeah, Bill Parcells. You've got the one that, you know, goes ballistic and teaches supposedly through threats and through intimidation. With coaching, we want to do more than mentoring. We want to be encouraging our people to move forward, our colleagues to move forward. The one thing that you really want to think of when you're coaching is, and Terry had the quote that God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should be listening twice as much as you should be talking when you're coaching. That's really hard for me because I talk. Diane laughs because she knows it. I do have to force myself to really listen when I'm coaching. When I was first hired for HVAC, I was hired as an instructional coach, and then the whole thing shifted and everything. But you really have to think about listening to what the people are saying, not only with their words, but then also listening with your eyes, because the body language and the underlying message is really critical. So as I'm talking about that, I'm going to be talking a lot to you right now about coaching, kind of backwards. So we're going to talk about traditional coaching, different types of coaching, some of the partnership principles which are laid out and spelled out really well in the book, communication styles, some activities in coaching, getting that buy-in and then bringing others along, or hopefully what we'll go through. I love this quote from Jim because it really, and I have to remind myself of it when I get frustrated. Teachers don't resist change, they resist poorly designed change initiatives. Is that powerful or what? And teachers have been trained to be able to ignore some of those poorly designed initiatives because the pendulum just keeps swinging back and forth. So what we're looking at is we want to make sure we have quality design change. The LD rule, and I can't even say new anymore because it's been around for a while, it is a very new way of looking at things, but yet part of it didn't change at all. The definition of LD never changed. It's how we're identifying and what we're using to identify those kids who have learning disabilities. When Jim was doing his research, he found that if coaching was done, teachers actually implemented about 90% of what they learned. Without coaching, it was between 10 to 30%. And he has one, it's not in this book, and it was on a workshop that I was with him. He said, teachers, when they learn something new, if there isn't coaching, within 3 to 5 years, they will have tweaked that new thing back to their old practices and say they're doing something new. Because it's just, they go back to their comfort zone. So you need that coaching. That's why this role is so critical. We need this coaching to keep the momentum going forward, to keep fidelity. I'm the fidelity queen of implementation. So that's what coaching is all about, is keeping that momentum going, working with a colleague. You are not someone, I'm hoping that as your district is, you're in the same level as the people that you're coaching. It's not meant to be an administrative position. It's meant to be a colleague-to-colleague position. You have to do the coaching for the sustainable change. And teachers need to know the why. I think that's something we often don't do, or principals don't do. It's, we're buying this curriculum, this is what we're going to do. We need to let teachers know the why. They want those kids that are sitting in front of them every day to get the best education possible. If we tell them why we're changing, if we tell teachers why the rule changed and why eligibility criteria changed a little bit, then they can understand it. And we also need to honor those teachers as professionals, which we don't always do in education. So making sure that we listen to what they're saying, and that can help us coach along the way. There's different types of coaching. Cognitive coaching is something that there's a lot of trainings that were done. I think it was even in Faribault that had a lot of cognitive coaching. No? It was somewhere in this.
They're doing a lot in Austin, right?
Okay, Austin. So I know there was some in the southern area. But these are the different types of coaching. Instructional coaching actually takes some of the qualities of all of the coachings and puts it together as instructional coaching. Executive, that's mostly in the business, and it really, I don't know if coaching is the right word for it, because it's more of a top-down model, where you really help the participants supposedly see what they're competent in. You're teaching them and helping them see their skills. You're using data. All of the coaching requires some sort of data usage. And then there's an action plan. But it really is more directed rather than coming from within the person. It's usually more of a directed thing. The coactive coaching, that's where you're getting a little bit more of the engagement between the coach and the person. So the person is, it's usually a client. It's usually someone who you hire to coach you along. Sometimes have you heard of life coaches? That would be the coactive type coach, where that person comes in and helps you go with a goal that you set individually. They want to make sure that you have fulfillment in what you're doing in your life, that you've got some balance, and that you know the process that you're going to need to move forward with that goal that you have. So that at least is getting a little bit more of the collaboration going on. Cognitive coaching, this is one that is common in the schools. I'm going through some of these very quickly, and you've got everything there. It really, they say they lay out an efficient process for learning, and I love using the terms effective and efficient together because you need to have both of those. It does have good communication. There are some relationship building going on. You're having the person do a lot of reflection. So it's that reflective learning where they think back and they see what worked, what didn't work, and so on. There's a lot of aspects of cognitive coaching in Jim Knight's model of instructional coaching. So you have that reflection. You also have a conversation that's going to, what's my plan? We're going to talk about the plan. Then there's an observation of that plan being implemented, and then you go back and do that reflective conversation, which a lot of those things are in there. The mission is to have self-directed people able to work independently. Really, a lot of what we're doing when we're teaching is cognitive coaching of our students. Because we want them to be self-directed, we want them to be able to do their work on their own. Literacy or reading coaches, I think everybody knows what these are. They utilize a lot of different skills. They may utilize some cognitive, they may utilize some executive, but their focus is strictly on literacy coaching. How many of you have a reading coach or a reading specialist? A lot of districts do. So that's what their job is. But it is focused totally on literacy. So now, instructional coaching, I love the first line, and he says, I had to put it in there. Often a full-time job. Well, unfortunately, as budgets got tighter in the state of Minnesota, the people that were hired as instructional coaches were taken off their instructional coach job and put into a classroom and put into something else. It really could be a full-time job very, very easily, full-time plus. But we're going to take what we get. If a district's given you even 1 day or 1 hour or half an hour a day or whatever they've given you to focus on coaching, let's take it, show that it works, and move forward. But it does really focus on what are the research-based practices. Our law says we have to use scientifically research-based interventions. The coach is there to make sure that you are choosing those interventions and then following through on them. A lot of times, if you're doing instructional coaching, you will do the modeling. Now, this can be in instructional practices. You can model how to graph information. You can model how to interpret a graph. A lot of teachers that I've seen, they may graph things, but they never really look at it. So as a coach in this SRBI process, a big role that you can play is having grade level teams or whatever teams you meet, have them all bring a graph. And then you can take one of those graphs randomly and say, this is what I see. This is how I'm looking at that graph. I'm seeing that you've got, this is your goal, this is your aim, this is the progress you're making. Gosh, he's really not on track. Maybe we need to try something different. And really talk through that. A lot of think out louds. in the modeling. So you're showing the teachers, you're showing the people how to do something, and then letting them do it afterwards. So you're, again, identifying skills that they might need to work on. Maybe they just need to work on, how do I graph? I have more teachers than I care to admit who say, well, I'm collecting data, it's right here on this piece of paper. And yeah, they've collected it, but it doesn't mean anything really if you don't graph. I think I've got it later on. Joe Torgerson says, it's not RTI if it's not a graph. And I love that because it really focuses in on that graph is where you see the progress towards a set goal, and you can compare to their peers. You do need to have good communication skills. You need to make sure that you are able to state what you want to state in a simplistic but not simple manner, in a clear manner, and that you're also able to listen to what they're saying and see what they're doing. You do some reflective thinking like the cognitive coaching. How did that lesson work for you? How is this graph showing? Is this graph showing what you're seeing on a day-to-day basis with the student? Maybe we're not collecting the right data, which is often the case. You know, I use an example that I've used a million times, but she knows I use her as an example. I had a teacher who was doing a sight word intervention, it basically was flashcards, and was collecting data on a daily basis, and she was doing, students seemed to be doing well, and then she was graphing, and the graph wasn't showing what she was seeing on a day-to-day basis. So we sat down and she said, this just isn't working, Amy. So we sat down and talked and said, okay, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing the sight word, and I'm doing this, and this is what she's getting on it every day, and it's on my chart and everything. And then I'm doing a nonsense word CBM to monitor progress. And I looked at her and I said, now tell me what a nonsense word fluency looks like. And she said, well, it's CVC words. They sound it out. And she goes, oh, that has nothing to do with what I'm doing here. But I didn't want to tell her, well, you idiot, you're not measuring what you're doing. She had to figure it out. And so I had to coach her through that conversation by asking those prodding questions. And then we realized that she had the data. We just needed to take it from that chart and put it on a graph. But because there wasn't a sight word graph in Ames Web, she didn't think she could do it. So we have to make sure that teachers know it may not be something that you're using, if you're using Ames Web or Ted Chris Fast or Dibbles or whatever, those may not be the only measures you can do. And that's something we really, really, really need to keep coaching teachers on, is collecting data on what you're intervening on. And then building up that repertoire of research-based interventions, so that when you are in the problem-solving teams and you come up with a problem, you've got your problem statement saying that, Johnny can't do this, the next question is, what are we going to do? That's where a coach can really be helpful, starting to build that base of what do we have in this district, what intervention will work for that area of need. Easiest way to do that, first couple days of school is, in those workshop days, have teachers just write down some of the things they do in the classroom. What materials do you have? What resources do you have? When you have a student struggling, what do you do? Oh, well, I use PALS. Oh, okay, well, that's an intervention we know we have in the district. We know we have somebody trained. And so you can get a list of what you have in your district available for interventions. And then they may say, well, I don't know if that's research-based. Well, let's write it down. Let's see if there's some research on it. A lot of things that teachers do have research behind it. They just don't know where the research is. One of the best books, I didn't bring that one, is I've Dibbled, Now What? It's a lot of very simple interventions that teachers have done for years, and it tells you what the research is behind those. I've Dibbled, so D-I-B-E-L, I just happen to think, Now What? It's out of Cambion Learning or the old Sopris West. But it takes those interventions and it matches them with the Dibbles measures and works on that. But we've started to build a database in HVED on what are some interventions we have across our districts, so that if maybe somebody in Mabel Canton needs an intervention for that, they can look and see, oh, okay, somebody here in Spring Grove knows how to do this. Maybe I can talk to that teacher. So we're slowly building that one up. So this is the model that we're I'm going to be talking about a lot today is instructional coaching. And that's, even though it's not all instruction, it's using that framework for working with SRBI.